Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Wednesday, my name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in, always presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. We got the Cannons hats, we got some new sweaters in. I promise I did laundry, I'm not just always wearing this sweater, although it is incredibly comfortable. So check it all out right now, seaofdead403.ca. This is going to be a very busy live stream today. For those who are checking everything out after, you can get all of this stuff early when you check out the live streams at twitch.tv/primetimepk. We got the poll up right now, voting. Sorry, I'm all choked up about it. We're going to be, if you missed the Twitch stream yesterday, going to be doing a watch-along on Friday. WWE Library is back on Netflix, and so we're not going to put the actual video on the Twitch stream because that is soups illegal, but you can put it on yourselves and join along. We'll watch along. It's just like Friday nights when you used to like hang out with your buddies, watch some wrestling, and play some video games. At least that's what I did. So that's kind of the vibe we're looking for. But right now you can pick what decade we're going to be doing the watch along from. So it is a very busy show, as always fueled by Swift Energy, swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime to get 25% off over there. All right, so long drawn out intro in the books. Let's get into it and talk some really potentially bad news for the Calgary Flames. So, the Calgary Flames, real bad news, as they have potentially really bad news, as Connor Zary takes a knee-on-knee hit last night against the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. Before we get into the obvious frustration of it all, it's a dirty hit. It is, I understand when you slow things down, and it's always tricky. And the one time where I really kind of figured this out was, or not figured it out, but when it was really driven home for me, was in the bubble playoffs thing, when Matthew Tkachuk goes in and his skate comes up and it cuts Scheifele. It was his Achilles, right? Like, I'm not making that up. It was the Achilles injury that he had. Either way, really bad, and really like a devastating injury, and obviously, hopefully, a mistake. But when you slow it down and you watch it a bunch of times, it obviously looks intentional because that's what happened, right? It is very difficult to judge intent when you are slowing something down because the way it all plays out, it looks like how it is supposed to play out and how you wanted it to, because that's literally what happened. So it is difficult to kind of judge intent. And when you have a sport the speed of hockey and you are trying to slow it down, and that's just not how these decisions are made. That being said, these are the top 1% of skaters and athletes in the world, and I don't think that guy went out and was like, man, you know what I hate? Connor Zary's ACL. Let's go destroy that thing. I don't think that was the case, but I do think that was... It was a dirty play, and it's not a play that you should have in the NHL. There is obviously a focus on head injuries, rightfully so. Checking from behind, I feel like maybe has gone. It's not necessarily the main focus of people, but I do think that it should still be there. But knee-on-knee hits, we don't see them as often, so it's not as much of a concern for the National Hockey League, but it should be. This is something that can change. Like, this might be a little hyperbolic, and hopefully I am wrong. And I do think we've had some advances in modern science and all of that, but this is something that can change the trajectory of someone's career and someone's life. Like, people joke about it now that I'm 35 years old. People around my age is like, oh yeah, these knees aren't working the way that they used to and all that stuff. But like, you feel those things, right? And I haven't had an injury like that, but I mean, your dude's been a big guy for a while. So, I've asked a lot of the lower extremities, let's just say. And so you start to feel those things, and it really starts to wear on you. So yeah, like, this is something that is maybe not greatly, but it's something that's going to affect this guy for the rest of his life. So I feel like there should be punishment when stuff like that happens. And it is wild to me that we have a sport where you are supposed to be locked in. You have a stick, or in my case, if you're watching, a pen. You have this long stick that you are supposed to be in complete control of. If you're just going to lift the stick of someone and and try to get the puck away, and it happens to miss or it grazes up and it hits someone in the chin, then immediate. There is so much gray area in hockey, but that is an immediate penalty. And if there happens to be a little bit of blood, we don't take into account that different people mark up different ways and that scar tissue is a thing that exists and all of that. We're just like, nope, 4 minutes, boom. There is no gray area for that. Why? Because you have to be in control of your... to steal a MMA term, you have to be in control of your weapons the whole time. And for this, you have to be in control of your equipment at all times. So why, then, is there no accountability? And he takes a penalty in the game. But why is there no further accountability for you having to be in control of this thing that can hurt people in that way? So it seems like there isn't going to be any more discipline for it. I'm not asking for a 10-game suspension. And I feel like it is just kind of glancing by when you shouldn't be, and just like, okay, well, it's whatever. But when that shouldn't be the case. That this is, I think, a pretty serious thing that happened to Connor Zary, and it sucks. So the fact that there isn't going to be a suspension, it just feels gross. Is it the biggest deal? Like, I don't think that you're now going to see players see this and go, oh, well, now I can go out and knee, and we're going to just have a bunch of guys looking like Triple H jumping up with their knee and cranking guys like that. I don't think that's going to be the case, but this is still an opportunity for the NHL to establish somewhat of a norm when it comes to suspensions or anything like that, and the precedent that they're setting is, it's bad, but it's fine. In terms of how it affects the Calgary Flames now, again, as I'm recording this, we don't know the extent of the injury, but it sure didn't look great, did it? Right? Like when you have a leg that kind of, it bent the wrong way for a second, right? So that tends to not be a quick fix. Now, again, this is a young human being. They tend to bounce back. Things are a little bit springier than normal, but even the youthiest of youth, when your knee goes the wrong way and you're not an ostrich or a flamingo, that's bad. Ostrich may not have been the correct one in there, but you know what I'm saying. I'm rolling, right? This is really devastating. Toxic saying in the chat, and I agree. I think within the range of possibilities here is he is out for the season. And like, honestly, and again, this is no inside information at all. That this is just wildly reckless speculation. That would be my bet right now. If I were a betting man, and Lord knows I am, the part that I would put down the most money on would be that Connor Zary has played for the final time in the 2024-2025 season. And that, for a number of different reasons, sucks. From Zary's standpoint, like, again, we just went over how that can affect things down the line and stuff like that. But from just like if we're just focusing on the hockey, this is really bad for the development of him. Like, think of what we're talking about with Jeremy Poirier right now, where he missed basically a full season, and Zary's got about half the year in, but Poirier missed basically all of last season, and that has sent his development back at least a year, and maybe even more, given how horrific that injury ended up being. And just how graphic all of that can be. But it has set him back quite a bit. Like, for Zary, he has obviously established himself as an NHL player, but this was such a great year for his development. And he, like, if you just looked at the stats for Zary, it's not blow you away or anything like that, right? Like, the actual on-ice production, he says, trying to pull it up very, very quickly here, the actual on-ice production, it's 10 goals and 12 assists in 40 games. So we are not talking about someone who was threatening for even a top 100 point mark in the National Hockey League, but it was the way that he was progressing that was so nice to see. He, I think, made incredible strides as an offensive player this year. He showed a dynamic skill set as a setup guy. I think very importantly from the Calgary Flames standpoint, he was a real good zone entry guy. You could just see it on on the opening night. When he scores that goal, makes a real nice move, and gets the overtime winner, that the hands have obviously taken a step forward. The confidence was all the way there. The skating is good. Like, everything had progressed for him, and everything had taken a step. His puck handling and his sense on the ice and his touch, all of it. I was saying on Sportsnet tonight when I was on Monday, he kind of already was better than I thought he was going to be. Like, maybe not on a consistent basis, and certainly not from a results standpoint, but from a what the skill set could be. He had kind of already started to push what I thought the upper bound limits were going to be for him in his whole career. And we're talking about his second season and basically his first full year in the National Hockey League. It was all really ahead of where I thought he was going to be. And so to now set that back is quite... I keep using the word devastating. Like, the kid didn't die. Like, this isn't that sort of a thing. But when you are talking about young players adapting to the NHL life, there are progressions, right, that you make. And some guys skip a couple steps, and some guys hang up on some steps. That's why the NHL is not linear. We talk about that a million times. But he has... just exceeded every expectation that you would have for him. And the way you keep doing that is by playing, and you keep getting better, and you keep understanding what you have to work with now, and what you have to do to get better at this, and what you have to do to get better at this. And okay, well, that didn't work, but this worked before, so let's go with that. And now when you just miss 40 games of that, and now you're going into an off season where you're not working on, okay, I've got this figured out. Now, how can I be better at this? How can I be better at that? You're not worrying about, or you're not looking at progression. You are now trying to physically get back to where you were before. So just by definition, that sets your development back. And so it really does suck, because this was a real big part for his development as well. That this was a really big stretch for what he was doing, because not only was he getting acclimated to the ranks of the National Hockey League, and not only was he really getting kind of situated and figuring out what he could do, what he couldn't do, and all of that, he was learning how to be a center in the NHL. And that is, for the Calgary Flames, a really important step for him, because they don't have a lot there, certainly not long term, right? That is the next part of what the Flames need to do, is to shore things up down the middle. And he, playing as well as he has down there, has, I think, really brightened the future, I think, for the Flames. I've talked about it quite a bit, and how well he has played. It gives them another option, but it's still something that he is learning. So again, now instead of going into an offseason where he gets to work on that, all of this is presuming that this knee injury isn't good. And if it isn't, then he is now spending that whole offseason kind of working on that, but also trying to build that knee back up and understanding what he can do and trying to get it back to where it was on January 6th. 2025. So yeah, it sucks, because there was a lot kind of developing with him. And as Toxic says in the chat, he was supposed to develop into a 60-point guy next year. Yeah, like he was... I mean, what is he at? 22 points in 40 games. So we're just a touch over half a point per game. So he's probably going to be around like a 45-point guy. I also think that there was going to be a stretch where he was going to get like on a roll. And I kind of had him as a 50-point guy. But if he had gone on a run, like a point per game down the stretch, and got to 60 points this season, I wouldn't have been overly stunned, given what I have seen from him on a night in, night out basis. But you're right, Toxic. Like, he was supposed to get to that point, and then you're hoping that maybe there's another step that he takes, and he can be kind of a point per game guy, and someone you really can rely on from an offensive standpoint for a team that doesn't really have a whole lot of that in the system right now. So that is, it's something that sets things back a little bit. And you don't want to put the entire fate of the franchise on him, but it is something that if there is a stall in his development, it does kind of stall things in terms of figuring out what you all have from a Calgary Flames standpoint. The other part of it that is a bit of a bummer, and there's so many aspects of it, right? Like we can't cover all of them, nor am I equating the importance of, again, being able to play with grandchildren to, hey, the Flames don't have their second line center anymore. But another aspect of this was I thought he and Sharon Govich were really starting to build a pretty good chemistry. And Sharon Govich has been discussed a lot in this market this year, and it has not gone the way that he would have wanted it to so far this season, nor would the Flames have wanted it to so far this year. But he is starting to kind of come around a little bit. Like, he's starting to do some of those little things that help the team win, right? Like, he is that kind of a guy, and has, again, the shot for days and all of that stuff. And he was working a real chemistry, I thought, with Zary. And if that is something that you can now rely on going forward, then that is just another thing that you lock in. And also, as mentioned, Sharangovich is a big part of the future for this team. And you were getting to the point where you had figured out what you needed to do to get the most out of him. And now, if you have to put him with a Rooney or a whoever, and it lessens the impact of what he can maybe be, and working him back to what you kind of wanted for him. So it does suck. And Toxic brings up another good point. I feel bad for his mom too, seeing it live. Yeah, this is the mom's trip for the Calgary Flames, and there's never a good time to get hurt. But I've obviously never done it at the National Hockey League level, but I've had injuries in front of my mom before. It's not fun, and it just adds an extra wrinkle to that when you are understanding what is happening there, and for the mom as well, that cannot be a pleasant experience, and certainly dampening things out in California. For them, and this we'll discuss in a second. This has certainly not turned into the luxurious trip that I think they were hoping it would be with the moms. So, if again, by the time some people are watching this, all of this may be just incredibly dated. But if he is out long term, there is only one other option in the organization, really, for the Flames, and that's Rory Cairns. They don't. It is kind of by default. I don't even know what the second best option would be, aside from going out and making a trade or making a waiver claim or something along those lines. In the organization today on January 8th at 12:47 p.m. Mountain Time, that is the best option. And it is not, it is by default, but he has also earned a promotion, and I would say he was probably next in line to get somewhat of an opportunity anyway. He has been really impressive with the Wranglers this season, and you talk about someone who can maybe set an example for a Connor Zary. Rory Cairns has dealt with a lot of injuries, and that has kind of been the only thing that has been holding him back. When he has been out on the ice, he has produced. Not at this level, I don't believe, but he has at least produced. But chatting with him, we had him on Sportsnet today when I was on with Logo when we were at the tennis thing, which ended up being a disaster. But we had him on, and he understood, the best ability is availability, right? So that is the first thing I need to do, is figure out how I can train so that I can stay out there for X amount of games. However many games the Wranglers play this season, he wants to be in all of them. So now he may be up with the Flames, but you understand what I'm saying. And so he had, that was the first thing that he worked on, and it has now turned out that if you give this guy 40 some odd games in a row to play, he's kind of going to be awesome. And there is a built-in chemistry already with him and Pelche. Those guys work together pretty well down in the American Hockey League. So it checks so many boxes, and it also rewards a kid for a phenomenal season in the American Hockey League. It is, I think, a significant blow to the Wranglers, who are, I think they have the best points percentage, or at least one of them, in the American Hockey League. They're doing really well anyway. So it's just a bummer for them that's kind of how that is going to play out. But, or potentially could play out, but that is the joys of being an American Hockey League franchise, I would say. So overall, it all sucks. Every part of it is just dreadful. And when you just look at the human being side of it, it's terrible. And when you start to branch it out further and further, and you start to look at what it means for his development, what it means for the Flames development, and what it means for the organization as a whole, every part of it, it just really, really sucks, because this was a real, it was a developmental win for the Flames. It really was. And you've had a couple of these now this year, right? Mantha is not a big part of the future, nor was he an exceptional player, but he was at least figuring some things out with the team. And then he goes down with an injury. Kirkland was an amazing story, coming out and just like being undeniable and forcing his way into the lineup every week. And now he's out with an injury, and he's done for the year. And we will see what happens with Zary. I am not anticipating positive news on that front, but hopefully I am very, very wrong when it comes to that sort of a thing. As Toxic mentioned in the chat before, not overly optimistic about a game tonight. The Calgary Flames are out in Los Angeles, getting ready to take on the LA Kings. Obviously, our thoughts and everything like that are with people out in Southern California right now. I have an aunt and uncle who live out there that they've had to be evacuated because of the wildfire situation. The most recent note on this one, oh, tonight's game is postponed. Okay, that came down 4 minutes ago from Chris Johnston. Oh, it came out a little bit more than that ago. Apologies. Yeah, my bad. I did not see that, but yeah, Steinberg tweeting out 13 minutes ago, with tonight's Flames game in Los Angeles postponed due to Southern California wildfires, that there's all of these other, the Hitmen game's going to be on 960 tonight, but that this game has officially been postponed. The Flames tweeting things out about that as well. So yeah, no game tonight. So thoughts to everyone dealing with the wildfire situation out there. It is no fun and can be a very, very, very scary situation. And when you start talking about densely populated areas like Los Angeles is, that gets scary quickly. So hopefully everyone is okay out there. But yeah, not a banner 24 hours for the Flames. I mean, they do win, and Mackenzie Weegar does a fun little waving thing there at the end. And for the Flames, it's another obstacle that they have had to overcome this season. But this one might be the straw that breaks the camel's back for this particular organization. So that is way longer than I thought we were going to go on Calgary Flames stuff today. I kind of thought that would just be 5 minutes off the top just to, fit some Flames talk in, and that would be that. But a nice little conversation there, a nice little chat about something that's really not that nice involving the Flames. We now shift gears and go to the National Football League as the regular season is done, which for more than half of the league means it's time to get ready for the offseason. And for the select few, they now get ready for the march toward the Lombardi Trophy, or just prolonging the inevitable before their season comes to an end. Either way, it is one giant pot of teams. And so for the last time this year, we go from 32 to 1 and rank the NFL teams. It is time for our NFL Power Rankings. It is NFL Power Rankings. Normally I say going into week blah, 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 but this is coming out of the regular season. So for the last time this year, these are your Power Rankings. We start, as we always do, at the bottom, and as we did for most of the season, and certainly the close of it, we start with the New York Giants. When you look at the teams that currently play in the National Football League, they feel like they're the furthest away from being good right now. Like, just doing a quick run through of the teams, and we're going to do that here in a sec, the off-season preview. Just doing a quick run through of things, they feel like they're the farthest away from, like, yeah, real contention. Like, when you go through it, it's okay, well, they need this, they need this, they need this, they need this, and they need a little bit of this. They basically have Malik Neighbors and a couple pass rushers that you feel okay about. And that's about it. Maybe a running back who could be a 1B if this thing really got rolling for this team. So it makes life easy for the GM because you just draft fucking everything. But it's a long way to go to get back to relevancy for a team out in New York. Coming in at 31, they are the Tennessee Titans. I don't think they are starting with the same blank canvas that the New York Giants are starting from, but the quarterback situation isn't great there, and now they are looking for a new general manager as well. Coming in at number 30, it is the Jacksonville Jaguars. One of the biggest disappointments of the NFL this season. We talked about it the other day. Doug Peterson is now looking for another job. I would imagine he looks for a while. This team had a real opportunity. When you look at how the division played out, We talked about it before. We just talked about the Tennessee Titans, so things went bad for them. The Indianapolis Colts, we're going to talk about them very, very soon. This was a bad year for the Colts, and it was a very vulnerable year for the Houston Texans, who just squeaked by in a number of different games and were able to kind of coast at the end because there was no pressure coming from anyone else in their division. This was all set up for Jacksonville to have a really big year, and instead, even before the Trevor Lawrence injury, things got way out of hand. And so there are concerns about where this team is at right now and where they're going in the future, because the unscrew-upable best quarterback prospect in a really long time isn't really showing up in the way that they need him to right now. At number 29, it is the Vegas Raiders. Speaking of having basically nothing, they have a very good tight end now in Brock Bowers and a couple guys who can get to the quarterback. And again, that's about it. They also firing the coach. We didn't talk about that because it wasn't a Blue Monday thing. But the Vegas Raiders making, I think, the obvious choice in getting rid of Antonio Pierce. So they are kind of starting with a blank space going into this year. We talked about the Jags being one of the most disappointing teams of the season. They are past, because the New York Jets are the biggest disappointment in the NFL. They were it was plus odds for them to miss the playoffs coming into the season. At one point, they were the favorites to win the division. Their win total coming into the year was around 9.5 or 10. That's what we were talking about. And this team wasn't even close to that. Just a disaster of a year for the New York Jets. The coach is gone. And the thing that is concerning is this was, going into the year, a young, talented roster with a lot of very promising players, and all what you really felt was all you needed was a quarterback. And what you got was a quarterback who I praised early in the year for holding people accountable, but then when it came to holding himself accountable, he didn't do that, and everything started crumbling because, I'm not going to say because of it, it was one of the things that led to everything crumbling out in New York. But now this young, promising roster, all of a sudden, Garrett Wilson maybe doesn't want to be there anymore. All of a sudden, that defense took a bit of a step back, and now we're a little bit concerned about what you have on that side. You went from basically a championship feeling roster that just needed one more puzzle piece to someone coming along and just knocking that whole table up. Or you tried to put the one puzzle piece in, and as you jammed it in, 5 others bounced away, and now you have to find those again because the dog ate one of them. That is where the Jets are at right now. They are forcing me to make wild metaphors because things have gone that bad for the Jets. Toxic in the chat asking, do you think Aaron Rodgers is retiring? I have gone back and forth on this. I don't think he'll retire. I don't think he wants this to be the way that he goes out. And I think that last game where he was able to style it a little bit and beat a Dolphins team that still technically had something to play for, but I think pretty quick in that game had an understanding that they didn't have anything to play for, and so they didn't really play. I think that is going to convince Aaron Rodgers that he still has something left. I don't think his ego will allow him to go out like that. I think that he will see other running backs and whatever who have in their second year coming back from an Achilles injury have been a little bit better. I think he's going to talk himself into it. Although that's what I thought. I didn't think there was a chance that he was going to retire. But then you look at how everything was handled around that game, and it's a celebration because it was 500 touchdown passes or something like that, and it was just the announce crew was making a real concerted effort to just be hey, look, this guy, maybe it's not the same now, and maybe he said some shit and all of that, but this is still one of the greatest quarterbacks we have ever seen. And generally they only talk about that if someone has slipped something to them, that this might be the last time you do get to talk about this cat. So I didn't think that there was going to be a chance, Toxic, that he was going to retire coming into going into that last game. But now coming out of it, it is, I think, still in my mind, 65-35, 65 that he's going to stay, 35 that he's not. I think it's kind of around that, but I don't know. I could at least see it at this point. I certainly don't think he'll stay in New York. That feels like a bridge that's been burned. Although he does have a bit of control there. So we will see how it all plays out. That is going to be such a very weird situation out in New York this season. Going out of the top five, we have the Cleveland Browns coming in at number 27. They are back to having a quarterback issue with Deshaun Watson. I saw a TikTok the other day that said the Cleveland Browns have the worst quarterback situation in the history of football. I don't like. I can see where they are coming from because it is such a gigantic contract and he is so bad. Like, it has just gone so badly so quickly, and it is such a hindrance if you do cut that it's difficult to kind of wrap your head around. I don't like, personally, talent-wise, like, he's not great anymore. It's not even the worst quarterback situation the Browns have ever had. And like, Raider fan here, all right? Like, we've had some quarterback situation. Drafted a bust of a quarterback ahead of Calvin Johnson, right? We drafted a meh defensive back over Aaron Rodgers, who, I mean, yeah, like 20 years later, that looks okay, but at the time, not awesome. So there have been worse, but it is a really, really bad situation out in Cleveland. At 26, it's New Orleans. Really difficult to get a sense on what the Saints are going into this offseason. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but in terms of how this season went, everyone got hurt and it was a disaster. At 25, it is the Chicago Bears. Some signs of life for the Bears as the season goes on. So that is, I think, a positive thing that you can take from this, is that, like, there was at least that last game, it went well, because there was a stretch there where it looked really bad. But I think you saw enough from Caleb Williams that you feel like there is not as much reason maybe to panic as it looked like in the middle of the year. You need to get a good coach in there. Mike McCarthy's not that, but the Dallas Cowboys saved them from themselves. You need to get a good coach in there, and you need to get this thing, like, back on track. But I don't think it's as bad as it looked midway through the year. At 24, it's New England. Now that the season is done, the Drake May experiment looks positive. He looks like he is a thing. The concerns that you have around this team are the defense took, I think, a significant step back from what we thought they were going to be. There is, as predicted, nothing around this guy on the offensive side, and the coach was bad. So now you have a incredibly important decision to make with the head coach. You have a lot of money to spend in free agency and a roster that has a lot of holes to fill. So a very important offseason coming up for the Patriots, but I don't think they belong in that bottom tier of, oh my God, what is going to happen here? Because specifically of Drake May. At 23, it is the Carolina Panthers. This little stretch in here is teams that are actually feeling good because of how their young quarterbacks produced late in the season, with Bryce Young turning things around. That is huge for them. They're not going to feel the pressure to draft another quarterback. That there were stretches where they were the worst team in football, and there was the talk like, okay, well, they're just going to draft another quarterback again and start this process. And we talked about how that would have been a mistake. Well, now Bryce Young has again saved them from themselves and looks like he is an actual thing. And now you can start to build around that guy. We mentioned before, this little chunk here was about young quarterbacks who turned things around and made you feel a little bit optimistic. That ends now, because the next team on the list is the Indianapolis Colts. They were a better team than Carolina, New England, and Chicago, but it certainly doesn't feel like that now coming into the off season. They are keeping the coach around, which I don't love, but I also don't hate that. That they're keeping the general manager around, which I like. It's a weird situation because they did not get the most out of Anthony Richardson at all, and the team suffered because of it. That being said, like, you have a few success stories on this team, right? Like, the receiving group, even with very inconsistent quarterback play, I think you saw that you have a few gems there on the offensive side of the football. Now, the defense was a disaster. It was last year, and they didn't address that. Now, they fired Gus Bradley, who I think is a bit too predictable for today's NFL, and so maybe there is a bit of an addition there. So I don't disagree with not just blowing everything up, but there is a lot of pressure now on the Colts going into this next season. There's always pressure on the Dallas Cowboys. They come in at number 21. Injuries and whatnot hurt them, but this was just not a good football team all season long. Again, don't let the Dak Prescott injury mask the fact that this was just not a quality football team for large stretches. At 20, it's the San Francisco 49ers. Just a lost season for them. Everyone gets hurt. They had amazing injury luck now 2 seasons ago. This season didn't really go well for them at all. They have big decisions to make with Brock Purdy and a few things going on in the wide receiver room, but I also think that they are seeing that maybe a little bit of youth and depth are needed on this roster. At number 19, it is the Arizona Cardinals. I have here, the Arizona Cardinals somehow managed to both exceed expectations this year and be a disappointment all in one season. They did significantly, I think the win total at the beginning of the year was 4.5. They did significantly better than that. But then when they established that they were better than that, they really fumbled it down the stretch. And the can't miss Marvin Harrison Jr., it's year one, and I think it'll be fine, but it was a miss in year one. And the defense that took some steps forward also kind of stalled. And so now there's more progression that needs to be made. So they are further along than people thought, but they didn't get as far as maybe they could have if there was a little bit more consistency on that roster. At 18, it is the Miami Dolphins. They have some big questions to answer because, yes, everything falls apart because Tua gets hurt. And if Tua is healthy, I think that this team gets it back on track and is probably playing in a playoff game this week because they only miss out by one. And how bad it looked it looked bad with Tua in the beginning of the season. Let's not forget that. The game that he really got hurt in, they were losing by 100 against the Buffalo Bills on a Thursday night. And that was coming off of a bit of a so-so performance against Jacksonville, who, as we've discussed, this year. But there is, the Tyreek Hill situation, apparently it's been ironed out and everyone's fine, but that's still hanging over. As we discussed the other day, you saw that the margin for error on this team is so small. And so for Mike McDaniel, who everyone viewed as his offensive genius, he has a bit to make up for now because this was not a good season for him. And you can't be like every team, if they lost their quarterback, things go badly. And that's one of the reasons why we were so pro Miami a couple of years ago, because that's everybody. If you lose your quarterback, it goes sideways very, very quickly. But it looked so stuck in the mud and so ugly. And if you just lose one piece from a phenomenally built offense, you shouldn't go from hero to zero that quickly. So I think some interesting decisions ahead for the Miami Dolphins coming up here this season, or this offseason. At 17, it is Atlanta. Michael Penix gave this team some life, but the defense really let them down. Now they focus on that coming up here in the offseason. At 16, yes, they're in the playoffs, and yes, they're behind some teams that aren't. It's the Houston Texans. It still has not looked good out there. It wasn't supposed to in this last game of the season, but they haven't done a whole lot to build off of that big year for CJ Stroud. And so this could be something to remember for some of these rookies going into next year, is that the sophomore slump, can certainly be a thing. And so I think that there is a bit of concern around that out in Houston. I do think overall they're going to be fine, but this was just a year where everyone kind of caught up to them. Now they need to figure out how to adjust. We'll see what they do in the postseason. At 15, it is the Cincinnati Bengals. They were half a decent defense away from being able to be in the playoffs and be a very concerning team here in the postseason. It's an MVP level season from Joe Burrow, an all-time great year from Jamar Chase. They have a lot to figure out now this offseason when it comes to Jamar Chase, to T. Higgins, and they have to piece together a defense again because that was absolutely abysmal. At 14, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We talked about it on Monday's show, recapping the week. Baker Mayfield making some of those big-time plays and those big-time throws, and Jalen McMillan being the one to do it, really rounds out this offense and gives you some confidence in this team going forward. You just worry about the defense now. Yes, they're not in the playoffs, but Seattle comes in at number 13. They're out of the playoffs, and I'm still like, you know what? I can't quit this team. I'm going to be on them next year. I think that there's an obvious focus that needs to be done on the offensive line, but that's kind of it. If they, depth maybe, I guess, on defense, because a couple guys got hurt, and it fell apart very quickly, but it started to come together as the year went on, and so I think they are going to be probably a pretty trendy buy team going into next season. At 12, it is the Denver Broncos. They get in with a big performance. As we discussed, maybe not necessarily a team you should be taking all that seriously, given who they beat to get into the playoffs. We talked about that over on Monday's show. At number 11, it is the LA Chargers. Defensively, this team very good all season long, and you can really see that Justin Herbert has gotten more comfortable with his weapons. This offense is really coming together at an interesting time. So that they are a very threatening team now, I think, coming into the postseason. At number 10, it is the Washington Commanders. I was worried that maybe this thing had kind of turned into a pumpkin a little bit, but they had a couple of good responses there. They are not among the elite yet, but this was a heck of a coaching job from Dan Quinn, and a really, really fun step forward for Washington this season. At number 9, it is the LA Rams. They are into the postseason and hosting on Monday night, and all of my concerns about this team maybe falling apart down the stretch didn't happen. They played phenomenal football down the stretch, and so they are one of the biggest I'm wrong teams coming out of this regular season. That they were excellent all year long, and it's a tough matchup going into round 1 here against Minnesota on Monday night, but they're going to be a difficult out, as the odds would suggest for you there. At number 8, it is the Green Bay Packers. Injuries really hurt. Christian Watson is done for the playoffs, it seems like. That's going to be something that really, I think, hampers this team, although they have a ton of weapons. But you guys know what I felt about Christian Watson all season long, really. I think he's a really talented player, but this team did really seem much like they did last year. This team really started to find their stride as the year went on. At 7, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's just a few too many concerning performances down the stretch that has me a little bit worried about this team here. And they are significant underdogs in round number 1. At number 6, it's the Minnesota Vikings. We talked about them on Monday as well. Concerns around Sam Darnold after the performance on Sunday Night Football. Can he be the guy to help lead this team? Because everything else there has really figured itself out. It is now just, can this guy be the guy to take this team to another level? We will see what ends up coming of that, but it's a very interesting discussion out in Minnesota, because it's been a really cool story with Sam Darnold and everything that he has done this year. But now, can he just help them finish the story? If we're going to pull from a wrestling comparison here. Into our top 5, and it's the same top 5 we've had for most of the season. At 5, it's the Philadelphia Eagles. They are a team that still feels like they have a lot of unanswered questions, but again, if it comes together, I feel like this is the most complete team left in the NFL. Like with Hurts and with Barkley, you can run out the clock when you have a lead. If you are trailing, you have A.J. Brown and Smith and, again, Saquon Barkley that you can rely on to try to push back. This defense has been really all over the place all season long, but I would take that defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, over almost anyone in football to lead my defense into the postseason. So they have it all. They have it all there. It is just, can they come together for 4 games in a row to get them another Lombardi trophy? At 4, it is the Baltimore Ravens. Again, they are different in that we know what they are. And it is just a matter of, can that get them all the way? I think that they learned from their mistakes in the AFC Championship game, and I don't think they'll make the same ones if they get another opportunity to make their way to New Orleans for the Super Bowl. At number 3, it is Kansas City. They are up here based on reputation alone. Nothing we saw from them in the regular season makes you think that this is a team that should be threatening when we get into playoff time, but it is still, it's Mahomes, it's Reed, it's Kelsey, now unleashed, we would assume, and it's Spags in January. So we will see when we get this team in a couple of weeks what if they really were saving it for playoff time now, or if this is going to be maybe a lot of whistling by the graveyard for me all season long. At 2, Detroit. I really wanted to put them at 1, I'll be honest. It was such an impressive win over the Vikings to close out the season, and I think really did show that this is a team that can really go after that top spot in the NFC and can really push towards a championship opportunity. Like that was like, we still have concerns, right? All the injuries they have on the defensive side, but that was such a good performance over such a good team that it kind of showed like, look, there's still a gap here between everyone else. And yes, even with the injuries that people had, that's just everyone kind of catching up. We still have a gap there that we're better than everyone, so we will see. But the number 1 team in all the land, still the Buffalo Bills. They do not get a number 1 seed. They are going to have to play in round 1 of the playoffs, but their win over Detroit, they had wins over like the other top 3 teams, right? or the other teams in the top 3, I guess. They beat Detroit, they beat Kansas City. You do that, you get to stay at number 1 in the power rankings as the regular season comes to a close. So, big wins this year, keep Buffalo there, and we'll see now. This playoff, it's so much fun, because you look at it, like, now that we're in, if how many are in the category of, if they won the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be surprised? Buffalo, Detroit, Kansas City. I have Baltimore there. Philadelphia, I still have them there. Honestly, Minnesota is that team for me. Green Bay would be that team for me. And like Pittsburgh and the Rams are kind of on the borderline. So we're talking about nine teams that could win the Super. There's only 14 left. 9 teams could still win the Super Bowl. And I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, this is the upset of all upsets. That is how good that this season is kind of getting to here. It has felt like a bit of a bad year. And I do think the NFL, from an on-field standpoint, is kind of in a bad spot right now. But now that we are getting into playoff time, oh, it's all looking good. It is all looking really, really good. Hello to Deeds out in on the chat. No game today, talking about the Flames. Damn, now what am I going to do tonight? All jokes aside, I hope everyone is okay down there. Yes, again, thoughts out to everyone out in Los Angeles with everything going on out there. Just a very, very, very scary situation. So yeah, it's scary. With everything that is happening there. But yes, a lot of people's Wednesday nights opened up now. And not to make light of a situation or anything like that, but I wasn't going to be able to watch the game anyway because I'm doing trivia tonight. So if you happen to be in Calgary and around downtown, Pazzi Pizzeria, 7:30. Get there a little bit earlier because I have to give you papers and you have to come up with team name and stuff like that. And just walk in at 7:30, it's going to delay things a little bit. So we get 7:15. Get there for trivia downtown with me tonight. Cheap plug-in. All right, let's continue now and go to the world of WWE. It has been a massive week for World Wrestling Entertainment as they are on Netflix now. For those of us up here in Canada and internationally, everything is on Netflix. In the States, it's a little bit more spread out. But this was, regardless of where you live, a monster week for the WWE. So let's break down some of the offerings that we have seen from World Wrestling Entertainment this week so far. Didn't get a chance to talk about WWE Raw from this week yet. So I talked a little bit about it on the Twitch stream, the video game stream on Tuesday. Follow me on social media at Primetime Klein for all the updates on that. But let's break it down a little bit more in depth here. My first thought about Raw on Netflix is that it was a great celebration of wrestling. That's my biggest takeaway. It was a celebration of wrestling and this company. For a long time, as a wrestling fan, it felt like WWE was trying to do everything but be a wrestling company. It was almost like they were trying to trick people into coming in for the wrestling. Like they were almost apologizing for being a wrestling company. Yes, we'll have wrestling in the name, but then entertainment immediately. And it's not wrestling, it's sports entertainment. And they're not wrestlers, they're superstars. And we do movies here, pal. We don't do matches and all of those things. It is like they were trying to do everything they could to make you forget that you were watching wrestling. And I mean, that part of it is like, that's the thing, is that you don't want to go in being, oh wow, I am watching wrestling, because that takes you out of the illusion of some of it. But the big part of it is that this company that was the biggest in this art form that we all love as wrestling fans was basically ashamed of what it was and tried everything they could to not be that sort of a thing, to be respected. And what we had on Monday was a company that was unabashedly a wrestling company. Some people got worked up about he said heel and babyface in that opening thing as, oh, they're giving away the stuff of the business. Like, look, man, we know. Like, it's 2025. I think we can we've put that one behind us. If you want companies that don't do that, then fine. But again, for so long, that was the alternative, is that you would have like TNA or even AEW. It's like, oh, well, the babyface, blah, 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 right? Like they would do some of the inside stuff. Even now, like AEW does kind of feel like it's booked a little bit more toward the internet wrestling community. And so with some of that, there sometimes is a little bit of a wink and a nod, like, yeah, we know what's going on. And then WWE does it, and it's, oh, how could they? But I love, again, that they are not running away from what they are. That this is The reason they got to this dance, the reason they are a, once again, billion-dollar company is because they are a wrestling company. And to not run away from that, I think is awesome. And so, again, like, it's not like they went into everyone and all of a sudden Michael Cole is calling it as, like, real, right? And it's, oh, well, the babyface here, and oh, that's such a heel move, blah, 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 blah. No, it was one reference once. But it wasn't a, oh, we're an entertainment phenomenon and all of those things. This is a wrestling company. And so that's just really what it felt like. I love that they were embracing it. It was all really, really cool. And it all really did feel like a new era for the WWE. As for the show itself, you know, like, I appreciate that you only wanted a few matches so you could have a spotlight on them. But god damn did that show drag. Like, it was just such a drag the whole show. And I think the pacing of it really did take away from some of those things. And obviously, like, it went 3.5 hours, I think. You want to jam in a lot of different things. And you want people to see and to appreciate a lot of different things. But then by the end, like, it felt like it took the impact away from some of the matches. And I thought the main event kind of struggled because of it. Like, Rollins and Punk, they are not going to do a Lucha Libre style match or a match that they would have done 10 years ago, right? Like, it is a bit more of a methodical pace. And so for a crowd that's already been sitting there for 3.5 hours and has seen The Undertaker and have just worn themselves out booing Hulk Hogan, it took them a little bit to get into that match. And now they did get there. But it felt like it dragged. And by the end of the night, you kind of just thought, when can this be over? Can we finish this now? Can it be done? Like, this was fun, but I am tired and I want to go home. That's kind of what it felt like out there. The pacing needs to change. And not every week is going to be like this, where every commercial break you are coming back and, hey, here's this celebrity and that celebrity, and there's Wale, and there's this, and here's a big thing with the dude smoking, and here's all these different things, and here's 18 video packages so you can see everything that's going on. It's not always going to be like that, but that was the one thing that kind of took away from the specialness of everything. I think the matches were really good. I think they got over a lot of the key points that they needed to hit on, right? Like, you got the Roman Reigns bloodline thing, and Roman Reigns is back to being a top star. And Cody is established as a top guy, and The Rock is back, and Cody's feud with Kevin Owens, and it's all tied into this bloodline thing. Like, they hit the major story points that they needed to hit. I think they hit. On the women's side too, Rhea Ripley is she's that bitch, right? Like, she is a dominant ass kicker, and Liv Morgan and company, a worthy adversary, but this is back to being Rhea's division now. So they got that across. The one main thing, though, that I had an issue with is that Gunther's still the champion on Raw. And this is one of the problems they had with the brand split before. And I think one of the big problems they're going to have with the brand split now is that they made the other world championship feel like the other world championship, right? Like, when Jack Swagger is defending the world title against Mark Henry on one show, and it's John Cena against Triple H on the other one, which one do you think people are going to be taking more seriously? And so it was the same here, where all of this focus is on Cody. He's still the undisputed WWE champion, and so we had one video package on Gunther, I am the world champion, but we're not advancing any story, we're not whatever, it's just, hey, by the way, I'm this guy who's really good, and I have a belt that's also called the world title. So this felt like it was such an afterthought, and Cody is the guy. And so this is the problem again with the brand split. And I think it's going to be an even bigger problem now with Netflix. Because before, Toxic remembers, right? And like, how could you not? And it was a fun era. Like, I really did enjoy that era of WWE. And you get like the early days of the brand split, and I thought they did it well. And maybe we'll do a bigger thing on a brand split at a later time. But I thought they actually did a few things pretty well. But you'd have the SmackDown 6, and it gives opportunities to guys who wouldn't have necessarily been world champions without it. And so that's cool, right? And so, like, you do get the bad with the good, right? Like, we just talked about the Jack Swagger, Mark Henry title matches and stuff like that. But you don't get Edge being a world champion, I don't think, without the brand split. You don't get Eddie Guerrero beating Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship without the brand split. You don't get Rey Mysterio Jr. being a world champion without the brand split. CM Punk, Jeff Hardy, all of those. Maybe you get a couple of them, but you do not get them for an extended period of time without that brand split. And so I do think it is important, based on the immense talent that this roster has, to be able to do that. But it was easy when the main show was on USA Network and the B show, which it was on like UPN or whatever, My Network Television or whatever it was. Now, USA Network, well, not a major network, it is NBC. And with that comes Saturday night's main event and all those other things. Like it is a big network to still be a part of and a big family to still be a part of. But Netflix is a completely bigger deal. And so it's going to feel very hard to say, yes, no, like Cody Rhodes is one of our biggest stars. And Netflix is our biggest platform that we have ever had to showcase our talent. But he's going to be over on USA Network on Friday night, wrestling on television because we have this brand split thing going on. So you get Gunther. Like the Roman Reigns storyline, that's the best thing kind of going right now in television. That's also over on SmackDown. But, I mean, like there's kind of a tie-in here because Sami Zayn, like he was really conflicted about joining them again, and people are mad at him about it. So you get that, right? Like that is going to be a very difficult line to walk. And I think they are just going to completely fuck off with the brand split, I think, for WrestleMania season, which I don't necessarily hate. I wish they would at least try, but you don't necessarily hate that, just to get the best stuff across. I'll be very interested to see what it all looks like post WrestleMania, because we got to a point before where with the first brand split where I just wanted an undisputed champion. Like, enough of this, let's just get an undisputed champion. He can go between both shows and we just do it that way. But now I do think that it is beneficial to have Gunther be a world champion and to have SmackDown have their own WWE champion. Don't call it undisputed because it's fucking not, but that is the one issue I see right now with where they're going with the brand split. The other WWE show that has happened this week is NXT. And even though the new era of NXT started a bit ago when they moved to CW, this felt like a big reset. And like the whole new era of WWE, that came up here too, I thought. You have two new champions, I guess technically three. Lexis King wins the Heritage Cup. But like you have two new champions, and you're setting a new direction for a lot of different characters now. And so this felt like new year, new NXT to me. What we start, Julia is the new NXT women's champion. The women's division on NXT is fantastic. They talk about it as the best women's division in pro wrestling right now, and I do not disagree. With the addition of Julia and Stephanie Vaquer, some of the up and coming talent, like Cora Jade is right there. Roxy Perez, who we're going to talk about in a second, is excellent. And then like the Lola Vices and all of them, all very talented performers. So there's a lot to get really excited about on the women's side. And now I think Julia being the leader of that, it adds a lot of legitimacy. Not that Roxy Perez didn't. This match was great. But now Julia being kind of the head of that is excellent. As far as the match is concerned, like maybe you would have hoped for a bit of a longer match. And like if this wasn't on just this 2-hour show with so many other things packed onto it and had been able to headline and given a bit of a longer time, I think it could have felt that much better and maybe even felt a little bit more epic. But given the story they were telling and the overall directional shift for NXT, I think you kind of have to sacrifice a little bit of the match for the overall story and importance of everything, and just kind of hope that offsets it a little bit. But I still think they made the most of what they had. And I thought they had a great match. And I think it makes sense to do this here too. It's part of a big show. And again, a big overall directional shift for the company and for the brand. And so Julia being the new face of that, I think is good. And like for her, she feels like an absolute superstar. And I have loved her work out in Japan with Stardom, and now getting the belt on her, I think makes a lot more sense. And again, you have a lot of really fresh championship matchups now for her going into NXT before she goes up to the main roster. And it kind of feels like the early days of NXT, where you have like Samoa Joe and like Adam Cole and Ricochet and even like Charlotte and all of them, Paige, on the NXT side of things, and they feel like they're already main roster ready, but you give them a little bit more seasoning and you give them a few more kind of draws. Let them be, instead of going up and all of a sudden she's in the feud for the Intercontinental title on the women's side, she is a main champion here and gets to build that reputation up still as that main champion. So she goes in with all that cachet that she probably would anyway because of her reputation from Japan, but it allows you to really build this star up. And like, again, NXT is kind of a touring brand, And we can talk about if developmental should be that, but it is. And so because of that, and it's still something that's supposed to draw numbers on a network, you need kind of those big stars. And I think Julia can be that big star. And also she comes with experience that can help some of the younger wrestlers out. So it makes all the sense in the world for her to be there right now, even though she does kind of feel like she is main roster ready. On the opposite side of that, Roxy Perez, seeing her growth has been so much fun. I was quite skeptical of the heel turn because she's such a likable babyface, right? Like, she's young, she's athletic, she's got a fun style. There's all those different things. Like, she is just a difficult character and a difficult person to hate. But this heel run, I think, has made her such a well-rounded performer. And she got to it very, very quickly, which was something I was not really anticipating. Because you see the first couple of weeks, and there's a lot of the stereotypical heel, like, nah, I'm snarling because I'm a bad person now, man. But the promo style and the match style and those facials and all of that really started to change and to grow and to develop. And like I said, it turned her into a very well-rounded performer. And it's kind of similar to what they did with Braun Breaker. He probably, I think, is a long-term babyface. It's even working its way now, right? Like, where are my dogs in whatever, barking such and such. And the style and the speed, and he's moving the ring when he's running and the spears and all of that. Like, he is a babyface. But they worked him as a heel for a few months, and now he comes up to the main roster as that, and it made him a better performer, and it made him a more well-rounded character. And so I think that happened here with Roxy Perez as well. It grew her into a more well-rounded performer, and she has done an excellent job with that. And to be this good at her age, the sky really is the limit. I just don't think there's anything she can't do in this business. That not the only major title change, as Obafemi is the new NXT champion. I don't even think they knew what they had in this guy when he started, but he just kept killing it in match after match, in story after story, and it became very apparent as it went on that, okay, it's not just that guy carrying him, it's not just that guy carrying him, it's not just that guy carrying him. This guy has it. Like, he has that it factor, right? Like, he is a huge man. He is very strong. He carries himself really well. He has a look of someone that if you just saw him in the airport, it's like, well, you're something. I don't know what you are, but you're a something if you're not a wrestling fan. You just know that guy is that. And they grew again that character and worked it through him. And the important thing is they didn't rush it. It would have been very easy to kind of, again, calling back to dark ages of WWE creative, it would have been very easy to ride back this thing, right? He gets a few matches, the people are excited about him, so let's throw him into the world title picture. Well, we don't really want to put the world title on him right now, but we also can't really beat him, and so it's this awkward thing, and then it's too much too soon, and everyone gets sick of the character. They didn't do that. They slowly worked him up. And, like, he gets the North American title opportunity pretty quickly. But they slowly worked him through that. And kind of like a UFC or a boxing champion working his way through a division before being able to move up. He basically cleared out the North American division and worked his way into that title shot. And so people were ready for him to be the world champ, or the NXT champion anyway, by the time he got there. So this was a great job of developing a talent, but a phenomenal talent that kept taking advantage of every opportunity that he was given and making the absolute most out of it. And I think they have a absolute star on their hands in Obafemi. If you wanted to do a year-long thing where NXT is just the Obafemi brand, then by all means. But if you wanted to get this thing off of him at Stand and Deliver, and then he is the first Raw back from WrestleMania, and he is on there, I don't hate that at all. Like, if you wanted to put him, hey, Wooden Limp, I appreciate the what's up. Hey, how's it going? But if you were to put an Obafemi, like, obviously for obvious reasons, the Odyssey Jones situation didn't work with the New Day, but with the New Day having this new attitude, Obafemi kind of fits right in. And so if they wanted to put him with those guys, they could do it tomorrow, and he fits right in. He is main roster ready right now. On the opposite end of the NXT title match, it was Trick Williams, who his time in NXT is probably up. Right? Like, he has developed such a fantastic character. The crowd loves the entrance. They really get into it. A lot of people really got behind him. And yes, like, he is not a, like, absolutely flawless performer or anything like that, but I do think that he has kind of plateaued now at the Performance Center and at NXT. I think that he has really grown his way into being a top star at NXT, but the rest of his development, both I think as a character and as an in-ring performer, now needs to happen at the main roster level. It is like in hockey or in baseball, where maybe a guy has a couple of things that need to be worked on, but he is too good to be working on it now at AAA or the American Hockey League. Like, for example, I'm based here in Calgary. Dustin Wolf, two-time AHL goaltender of the year, wasn't awesome in the NHL, but he wasn't learning anything else in the AHL, so you had to call him up, and this year he has been good and kind of learned it. That's kind of where Trick Williams is at, where any holes he has in his game, I think, can only now be figured out on the main roster, where there is a lot more room for him to grow. He has kind of gone and done everything on NXT's main roster. A few other NXT notes before we wrap up kind of this marathon one here today. Ava, daughter of the Rock. She still has a long way to go, but she is so much better than she used to be. Like, I've kind of picked and chosen my NXT spot, so I haven't watched her on a weekly basis or anything like that. And then seeing her, like, there's still work to do, but a lot of work has been done. Like, she is significantly better than where she was at when she started. And I actually found myself, like, intrigued by her conversations at times and stuff like that. So I think there's work to do, but work's been done, and it's been very effective so far. Shotzi and Stephanie Vacour, that feels like the direction they're going for the number one contenders match for the North American title, before we get to the Fallon Henley, I think it was. That's going to be really fun, and that's going to be awesome. And Vacour, like, she feels like a big deal, even going for the secondary championship. And I think having a legitimate performer like her holding that title is going to add a little bit more legitimacy to that belt. They've already done a pretty good job of having it be like, these are the up-and-comers holding this belt with her. But now I do think that a Stephanie Vacour title reign with that helps it out a little bit more. And her with Shotzi, and the new group that Shotzi has with Gigi Dolan, I think is fun. Lexis King's character, I think we need to take another step now with this. From what I understand, we've been doing I don't want to be this bad guy because that was my dad, and I'm trying to be good, but I keep having these bad tendencies, and what do I do? And even in this match, the Heritage Cup thing, you have, it looked like it was trying to be a botch, or it looked like it was a botch, but I think they intended it, where Dempsey does the leapfrog, and Lexis King, like, trying to get under him, but ends up headbutting him in the junk, and he's conflicted about, should I take advantage, should I not? And then he does, and he wins the championship. And so I think we've been doing that for a while now with him. I think we now need to progress into, this guy's an asshole. Let's just call it what it is. And this guy's actually a heel, because he is, I think, better as a heel. Like the what was it, Varsity Blondes thing and all of that. White meat babyface thing. Even the Hart Foundation redo thing that he did in MLW. He's fine at it, but he's got, like, the painted on beard thing, and there's just, I think, more to him as a heel character with this. So I think that this needs to progress a little bit more now. But I thought it was a fine match, nonetheless. I loved the look of this show. I really like it when they've been leaving the Performance Center lately, and it has been getting... It's been going into places that have a unique look, and this one had a unique look and a unique feel, and even the backstage area, like, it wasn't just your standard hockey locker room that they turn into an office. Like, there was wood paneling and all those different things. Like, it looked different, and so that was I thought really cool, and they do such a good job with that, because main roster, while it's been getting a little bit better, there is a real sameness to everything looking the same every night. And for a long time, when they just had, like, the video board and then the LED thing that kind of swung, like the wavy thing that they had, and they had that for Raw, SmackDown, and for every pay-per-view. You want things to have a different look, and you want things to have a different feel. And NXT being in the Performance Center gives it that, but then there's a sameness to those shows. And so now when you go to these places that have this unique look and a unique setup, it gives it a unique feel. It made it feel different, and because of that, it made it feel important. And now it's going to have a bit of okay, we're back to our familiar home base, we're back to a real strong thing here, let's go, with the Performance Center. And so I think just doing shows like that, I think, are a real benefit. And I think, honestly, AEW would benefit from that. That's why, like, Nitro, when they would do, like, the show from... obviously they started out in a mall, but then after that they would do the spring break shows, and they would do Sturgis, and they would do stuff like that. Like, it made it feel different, and it made it feel special, and it kind of broke up the monotony of, I'm watching the same show for 52 weeks, and April looks like June, looks like August, looks like October, looks like February. it all kind of looks the same, you can kind of break it up a little bit, and that just makes it all a little bit easier, I think, to digest. And so I think NXT has done a really good job with that. Also, The Rock, I mean, was it the most effective use of him? Probably not. You get a bit of a thing with him and Ethan Page. That was fun. I don't think it was planting the seeds for Ethan Page is going to help The Rock win at WrestleMania or anything like that, but it was a fun back and forth. And then some people getting on him like, oh, he's just hogging the spotlight and all of that. It's like, yeah, but it's still The Rock on NXT. Like, this was not the time for an epic promo or anything like that. This was him out there just... It's enough that he is existing on the CW and on NXT. And, like, I feel like sometimes when you have legends come back, because we've been burned by this before, you want them to, he comes out and cuts a 15-minute promo about how awesome Obafemi and Julia is and all these different things. And instead, he's just kind of like shooting the shit and he's swearing maybe a little bit too much and all of that. But I do think that him driving home the importance of the fans for NXT was good. And I do also think like the thing with like, hey, know your role, shut your mouth and enjoy the ride that The Rock takes you on with Cody. I think that, because it was a little weird, him doing the stuff with Cody and all that stuff yesterday, but that is one where I thought it was so obvious, like, yeah, of course that's going to happen. He's going to do that, and then slowly the bad guy's going to come out, and it's just him kind of luring Cody into this false sense, and it's Cody, like, all the times he's like, thank you, but Cody's not really buying it either. And so I think you can tell that story as this goes on. And so I think the one thing that the WWE, while they hadn't for a very long time, I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt for us to maybe believe that they're going to be able to tie all these loose ends together, and it's going to be a pretty awesome story by the time WrestleMania Night 2 is done out in Las Vegas. So, that is going to do it. For those watching live on twitch.tv/primetimepk, this was a marathon stream. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. 2 hours of just me talking at you. So thank you guys. Thank you to Deeds, Toxic, and Wooden Limp in the chat, and to anyone else who has popped in throughout the day. A special thank you to Wooden Limp, who is the first-time chatter in the group. Deeds, as a subscriber, always appreciate it, and Toxic is here for everything. Love that you guys are along for this ride with me, and really appreciate all the support. If you haven't, give me a follow on Twitch. If you have the means, subscribe, but if not, I fully understand. And if you just sit through some ads, I love that as well. Just being here means the world to me. All these going to be broken up into several different podcasts over the next few days, so not going to be here on Twitch for a bit. Friday, we are back though. It's going to be 8 o'clock, probably give or take. I mean, this was supposed to be noon today, and it ended up being at 12:30. But keep it locked on my social media, at Primetime Klein, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, all of that. I will have the updates there, because I want to do a watch-along. The poll, only Toxic was here to vote on it, so we're going to go 2000s WWE, and pick a bigger show from that and do a watch along. You'll have to watch on Netflix because I can't stream the video here, but we'll do a watch along on Twitch. We'll just shoot the shit, have some fun, and watch some Wild Attitude Era professional wrestling. So yeah, subscribe to Couch Potato Diary. Check out some great Calgary merch over at seaofdead403.ca. You can also, I mean, it helped get me through these shows. SwiftEnergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off. All right, I think that's all I have. If you missed any of this, it's available in podcast form. Check out Couch Potato Diary. It's all up on YouTube and Daily Motion. Thank you guys so much. I've talked way too much. I'm going to leave now. Bye-bye.